For Jesus to quench this woman's deepest thirst, he had to expose the deepest sin in her life. The pain of this woman's past was, you almost, in a way, you feel sorry for this woman. Suddenly her whole history has just been brought out into the open. How did she react? Maybe she suddenly thought to herself, maybe this living water isn't for me. Maybe I'm disqualified now. He knows everything. He knows too much. Now that he knows this, what's he going to say to me? Well, the woman tries to change the subject. She brings up this whole question of worship, and this is a part we just simply don't have time to get into the details of it, but to say it simply, the question of worship was an issue between Jews and Samaritans that they had fought over. It was one of the things you didn't bring up at dinner with your family, because if you did, there'd be fighting and war, and you'd go to blows with each other. The whole topic of worship was one that was so contentious, and there was such bitter hatred between Jews and Samaritans over the question of where does God's presence really dwell? Does he dwell on this mountain here, or does he dwell on that mountain there? And the Jews and Samaritans fought bitterly over that. It was a rivalry and an argument that was so contentious. And this woman says, you know what? I would rather talk about this bitter, contentious fight than talk about my past. Can you imagine that? How painful would it have been to talk about her past? That she says, it's preferable to talk about this. Let's fight about that instead. But Jesus, they talk about it for a little bit, but Jesus he's doing that to still press his identity. And at the end, Jesus, the woman says, I know the Messiah is coming. He'll sort this all out. And Jesus says, I am he. I'm the Messiah. But do you see what that means? This woman at first wanted Jesus as sort of a magician. Come and give me this water, then I don't have to drink anymore. Then my life is going to get so much easier. Just give me something to drink, then I don't need to deal with the well anymore. Then the woman wants simple answers. Solve this dilemma for us. Give us the answers to this age-old question. Jesus says, I'm the Messiah, but that's not why I've come into this world. I have come into this world to heal the deepest wounds of your heart. Put it a little bit differently, Jesus doesn't come into our lives just to talk about the weather. He doesn't come to deal with superficial issues. Jesus comes to go deep. He comes to penetrate and to probe the deepest corners of our heart, to deal with our brokenness and our sin at its very root level, to bring it into the open, to expose it in order to heal it. When the woman goes back into the village, she says, I've met someone who knows everything about me. Now we can look at that and say, isn't that neat? Jesus knows everything. But wait a minute. You really want someone to know everything about who you are? Think about that a minute. What does it mean that Jesus knows every thought that you've ever had? Every bit of resentment that you've ever held against another person, every moment of anger, everything you've ever said in a moment of anger, every thought that you've ever harbored in your mind. Jesus knows it all. Jesus knows it all. It becomes downright frightening to contemplate what Jesus actually knows. And yet this woman sees that as good news. It's good news that Jesus knows everything about who we are. It's good news that Jesus knows the inmost thoughts and desires of our heart. Why is that good news? How can that possibly be good news? And the answer is that Jesus loved us enough to cross the boundaries of heaven and earth to come to us. He doesn't just cross cultural boundaries. He doesn't just cross ethnic boundaries or moral boundaries. He crosses the boundaries of heaven and earth to come to us, to you and to me. He knows everything about who we are, and yet that did not hold him back. He came to us. And when he was put up on the cross, do you remember one of the things that he said? He said, I thirst. Jesus, in that moment on the cross, lost that relationship with his Father. He lost the love of his Father on the cross so that we might gain it, so that we might drink deeply from the well of living water. Jesus thirsted in body and soul for his Father so that we will never have to thirst. Jesus lost the love of his Father so that we might always be secure in the assurance that God loves us no matter what. Everything about who we are was brought out into the open on the cross. And it was dealt with there once and for all. And then Jesus can say, it's finished. It's all been dealt with.